I'd like to read about 4,000 pages. No, I have a couple of remarks here. I'd like to, first of all, thank everybody for attending. I know that a lot of you have substantial effort and expense. You traveled great distances to be here, while others, like myself, are fortunate enough to rent an apartment in the basement of this very restaurant.
Can you close the door?
In fact, this is actually,
Yeah, close the door.
Thank you.
I always close the door behind you.
I always get that wrong. Very bad spatial relations. Okay. So it's my further pleasure to extend a special welcome to all the wives and significant others and insignificant others who so graciously accompanied their fraternity members to this reunion. So after I wrote this paragraph, which took me several weeks, it occurred to me, why exactly am I thanking these people? And, although there are individuals, small groups of us who remain close, by and large, most of us, after all this time, are simply, we're friendly rather than real friends after half a century. So what is it that people get from reunions? Why do they attend them? And I think part of it is just to kind of measure yourself against everyone, and not necessarily with any mean spirit or jealousy, but just in a kind of reflective evaluation, like your success or lack thereof in business, the beauty or lack thereof of your wife, how much hair you have left, how many wrinkles and how much belly fat you have, and how many organs you've had removed, etc. That's a little part of reunions, but a more significant part of these gatherings is to call forth and recreate the memory of how you used to be. And a reunion, I think, is about memories. And at this age, any memories so at last year's reunion, we were asked to, what is our most vivid recollection of Kufa? Somebody asked that question. We kind of went around the room. And I'm a very slow, non-spontaneous thinker. So all I could recall at the time was the vast number of urinals in what was then the Hewitt building. Basically one for students. But recently I had occasion to check the Golden Legion yearbook write-ups for the graduating class of 1962, which is the 50th anniversary this year. And that was the year the Mets were founded, by the way. Suggest something. And I observed how many people said in the write-ups that they absolutely loved the Green Camp experience in their freshman years. Everybody, I had it different. I personally found Green Camp to be a traumatizing. I get PTSD flashbacks from it. Actually, schlepping the heavy wooden transits under a road tar melting sun, sleeping in prison dorm conditions, tormented by allergies, mosquitoes, and above all, Professor Peck. Not for me. But that memory kind of stimulated other recollections that I have. And I just want to share a few of them. And everybody who'd like to is certainly invited up here to do the same or say whatever they like. But I remember particularly knocking Professor Pizzaruso flat on his back as I rushed into the door of the descriptive geometry class. Somebody know what descriptive geometry was? It's a descriptive geometry class. But I got another D. I do remember, though, that in that same class we had a guest lecture from Professor Mary Blake. And she was asking how many students took more than 2 hours to do a particular homework, and a number of people raised their hands. Stu, of course, did it in less than about 15 minutes. But a number of people raised their hands. Took more than 2 hours, and then some people did. How many took more than 3 hours? How many took more than 4 hours, etc. And I was the only one to raise my hand at more than 5. More than 5. The last student in the class, I thought, until one final person reluctantly lifted his arm at 7 hours. And I knew right then that I had a friend for life. I remember the time Professor Tallman proclaimed that he could only understand any devices with only, he could not understand any device with only 3 terminals, which of course left out all transistors from his knowledge base. I remember the time Professor Armanakis was trying to explain vectors in the statics and dynamics class, and he said, if I see a vector in the hallway pointing to the men's room, I follow it. This is an idea of vectors. I remember the time Ira Whitman won a radio show prize for identifying Earth Angel. Now, not the, not the familiar version that we all know by the Penguins. This is the Earth Angel as sung by Johnny Tillotson, and it was a 45 RPM record, but it was played on the radio at 33. That was pretty good. I remember the several times Howie Wachtel would tie a string around Carl Levitt's wrist and would loop the string over a ceiling pipe in our house on 8th Street and would reel up Levitt's hand for crucial votes on paternity. I remember Marty Levine, now Schuyler, picking the lock to the rowboat storage cabinet at the Tamament Hotel in the Poconos, and a group of us taking out a rowboat at midnight, accompanied by some very highly impressed women.
Not impressed.
Impressed meaning that, like you impress sailors, you know, you force them to go. I remember, unfortunately couldn't make it here, but I remember Murray Sharkey giving his famous speech at the freshman pledge smoker, explaining the meaning of the letters SKT. This is, remember, this is before political correctness. So S, of course, stood for the stag parties on Friday nights, and K for the fag parties with no girls, and T for the drag parties on Saturdays for those who had dates. I guess Murray had to be one saying. I remember one of my personally proudest moments when on Hell Day, the day of the final pledge initiation, I poked around in Mark Roskin's ball of wool. Remember we were told that at the end of the day we'd have to go out in what we knitted. That was the thing on Hell Day. I poked around in Roskin's ball of wool and found the subway token concealed in it, which was verboten, and turned him into the pledge master for severe punishment, which I think was having to eat a raw oyster or something like that, which was really terrible. I remember George Carino, may he rest in peace. I don't know if you all know, but George passed away, yes, this past year. Yes, very sad about that. And I remember the crazy Perino parties he used to hold, and the Perino record, on which he sang the highest note ever recorded by a human being, a high R above M. And I remember Richie Sussman holding up a Playboy magazine and Perino licking the pages as Sussman turned them one by one. I remember hazily coming home on the subway very late one New Year's Eve, quite inebriated after my date for the evening, who was a Beth Israel nurse originally introduced by Sybil Schwartz, had told me a couple hours earlier that she wouldn't be showing up. So I had gone between these subway cars, leaned over the open railing to throw up, and thought that maybe I'd just go to sleep instead, when suddenly a strong hand pulled me back up, and it was this gentleman right here, Bernie Nathan, just happened to be on the same train back to the Bronx.
I do remember.
I remember swimming at the McBurney Y, but even more so at the Church of All Nations, where we were clad in Tarzan, pre-Johnny Weissmuller, Elmo Lincoln, one-shoulder strap bathing suits, and forced to surface dive for tiny objects that nearsighted people such as me couldn't even see when they were out of the water, much less at the bottom of the 8-foot barrel. So, for better or worse, these are some of the things SKT reunions have brought back to me. And sincerity, kinship, and tolerance, the real meaning of the fraternity letters, and not a bad set of ideals for a bunch of wannabe engineers half a century ago. So I'd like to express my appreciation to Ira Whitman and Al Kaufman, who first began organizing these reunions 3 years ago, and who this year passed the mantle, by the way, which for those who are not familiar is a portion of the Earth's interior between the crust and the core, to Stu Litt. And Stu took on the task of locating old brothers and sending out the contact emails, finding and vetting a suitable meeting site, negotiating the course, and finally individually cooking each of the confederations that had this evening. So during this period, he's also prepared an 8-hour address covering all of man's knowledge, which he will now deliver. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the engineer formerly known as Stu, rated by his classmates as most likely to secede, past president of Sigma Kappa Tau, Stu Litt.